This episode of No Time Like Joe Time is sponsored by Fate in Flames on Kindle Vella. Rena has grown up sheltered and cut off from the world, caring for her ailing mother. When fate catches up with her, she is thrust into a world of magic and intrigue she never knew existed, and the heritage she is not quite sure of. Read Fate in Flames on Kindle Vella.
Welcome to No Time Like Joe Time, where TV gets deep for no reason. I'm Generic Joe, here to say the same thing each time before you listen to an episode. You can find No Time Like Joe Time wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm just that generous and kind of a guy. Please rate, please like, subscribe, and comment, because I'm magic. It also really helps grow the show, and I love the conversations I'm having. So maybe you can help your old friend Joe. Now, if you, and I mean just you, want to be a guest, you can email me at notimelikejoetime@gmail.com. Love to have you on, figure out what show you like, and then we'll have a meaningful discussion. All right, let's get to the episode.
Like what you are listening to? Check out Lasso on Spotify Music, a new and upcoming local band from Minnesota.
Hey, welcome to No Time Like Joe Time, where we look at different forms of media. And as my dentist said when my wisdom teeth were causing issues, I'm going to pull as much wisdom from you as we can. I'm your host, Joe Johnson, and each week I bring a new guest to the Diamond Dogs to help have meaningful conversations. This week, I've got a great guest. She is the author of the best-selling book, Bursting with Happiness. She's the host of 2 podcasts, Bursting with Happiness, the podcast, and Story Junkies. She has her own blog. She's certified as a professional coach and officiates wedding. She's training to go to Mars, and she's wrestled lions bare hands in the plains of Africa. Okay, those last 2 weren't true, but I could have kept going because, man, is she going places. Please welcome Lisa White. And congrats, y'all. You just met someone cool.
And I met somebody cool too. How you doing?
Heck, I'm doing pretty good.
Good. I didn't know I'd get to talk to the actual Ted Lasso today, so this is very exciting.
Heck, just excited for today's episode. I feel like having you on the podcast reminds me of what my mom would say when a girl would just tell me she really liked me for my looks. Just seems too good to be true. So, hey, how you feeling about starting the episode?
I'm feeling great. Always looking forward to having a positive conversation. So looking forward to it.
Couldn't agree with you more. I feel like this is going to be one of those pictures where there are so many hidden objects in it. The more we look at the clips, the more we will find them.
Definitely. I agree with that.
Yeah. Well, I knew you would. I think we'll be like some of those fancy swimmers and be synchronized.
Definitely. Definitely. Are we going to be talking as Ted the entire episode, or are we going to see some Joe in this?
Oh, this? No, ma'am. This is just who I am.
All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. You be who you are. You do you, friend.
Yeah, all right. You're right. I'm doing the Ted Lasso character. It's just, I have so many amazing guests come on the podcast. And when I meet new people like you, I just get really nervous, and I can't help but feel like I'm a little kid at the adult table, just pretending to fit in, dressing up like this and talking like this. Well, it helps me feel a little more confident. I guess I just really wanted to impress you.
Yeah, I get it. Well, job well done. But quite frankly, you being you is the most impressive thing you can do. I'm just as excited to be here.
Well, thanks. One of the lines that I keep holding on to that I think is the most famous line is, if you build it, they will come.
Field of Dreams.
What?
Field of Dreams, maybe?
Wait,
Kevin Costner?
that's not Ted Lasso? Well,
No, although it could be.
I guess that makes sense. I didn't hear anyone call anyone Ted Lasso in the Field of Dreams.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, I guess I'm just playing as Led Tasso. Ah! As I always tell everybody, thank you for sinking that low to do that with me.
Yes. Fun stuff.
So I feel like you have a little bit of improv in you.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Is it because I know you do a lot of speaking? Is that
Yeah.
kind of where it comes?
I've always been pretty quick on my feet. But when you're on a stage and interacting with people, and a lot of the talks that I do, we engage with each other, the audience, and we talk and we share and contribute ideas and feelings. You got to be able to, have a couple of things in your back pocket that you can bring up and, create that sense of laughter and fun.
Yeah, definitely. Have you always been drawn to public speaking, or?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I always say, like, my dream is being in a stadium like full of 50,000 people, and then somebody being like, "Hey, do you want to just randomly come up here and talk?"
Yes.
And like that energy that comes with it.
Yeah.
And,
yeah, I agree.
And I think when you have the right energy, which I'm sensing you already do, like it draws people in.
Yeah. Well, and I think it comes from a place of genuinely wanting to connect with people. I mean, when I get up on a stage, I'm not there to sell. I'm not there to preach anything. I am there to serve. I am there to inspire people to find joy in life and to remind them of their awesomeness, because I think that too often we don't think of ourselves in the positive light and as the great people we are. We talk about instead what we don't accomplish and where we feel like we're failing. But I love to help people see their greatness. And when I get on a stage or have a conversation with someone, that's what I set out to do.
Yeah, I love that so much, because that is so, I'm so in line with that. Like, when I work with my boys or talk with my boys, or when I'm working with people at work, I always quote Mr. Rogers, that I like you just the way you are. And
absolutely
try to talk through them. I wrote a little poem for my boys, which is like, what does it mean when I say I like you just the way you are? It means if you won 100 trophies, I'd be so proud of you, but that's not who you are. I like you just the way you are. If you broke a lot of my toys and yelled at me, my feelings would be hurt and I talk to you, but that's not who you are. It's you I like. And I think that's such a powerful message. And I'm so glad there's people like you out there spreading that message.
Yeah, definitely. I love it. Right back at you, my friend.
Yeah, definitely. So I think talking to you, I do get totally a Ted Lasso vibe. And so I might already see why you've connected with the show, but I'm just curious, like, what drew you to the show? What's the history that you have with the show? And why did you want to pick this one?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So let me back up a little bit. So as positive and as optimistic as I am, I have always been a bit anxious, even as a kid. And I wrote about this in my book, just a fear, worrying all the time, thinking that something bad was going to happen and how can I prevent it? And just a nervous little kid. And that has been a part of me since growing up, all through adolescence and my teenage years and into adulthood. And for the most part, I've been able to manage it fine. And this is something I also talk about in my talks as well, because I believe that everybody has struggles, but they don't define us. We can be joyful despite our struggles and challenges. And throughout periods in my life, I have had to reach out for professional help and support to kind of tweak the tools so that I can continue to be me and happy and know that I can live a very happy and wonderful life. And whenever I found that I was struggling with that, I have no shame in reaching out and getting that
Yeah.
support. So as you can imagine, COVID was one of the worst
Yeah.
times of my life. I
Oh,
mean,
I
it
bet.
was so hard because I'm a germaphobe just naturally.
Mhm.
I used wet wipes and sanitizer before it was cool to use wet wipes and sanitizer. You know, my
Yeah.
kids call me safety patrol. I mean, this is what I do. This is who I am. And everybody's safety is the most important thing in my life. And sometimes when I struggle and have those feelings of out of control with lack of control,
Mm,
it becomes a problem. So COVID was very, 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 very dark, very difficult.
yeah.
And I was struggling to find any sense of joy at
Mm.
all. And a friend of mine said, you know, you got to watch this show, Ted Lasso. And I'm like, well, what is it about? And she said, soccer and British. And I'm like, I don't know. You know, but one of the things that I talk about is, you know, trying something different because
Mm.
there are things about us we don't know, and we can find joy in things that are unexpected. So she's like, you know, Lisa, you preach about finding joy. You need to step out of your comfort zone and try it. What's the worst that can happen? You try an episode, it's not your thing, or it's not your cup of tea.
Yeah.
Zing, and you move
Brilliant.
on. So I said, you know what? You're right. And I watched the first episode and I was all in. It
Mm.
became something that brought me so much joy in a time that was so dark.
Mm.
And, you know, just the writing was genius, and the character development and the funny, I
Mm.
mean, funny things. But what I loved the most about it was it kind of restored my faith in humanity. I mean, this
Mm.
character, and I know he's not real, and I know Ted Lasso's not a real person, but the joy and the simple back to basics of creating feelings of joy for other humans in the show,
Mm.
and acknowledging people as people and not just what they did on the field and what they could do
Yeah.
for you. It just reminded me at my core that most people in the world are pretty darn great. And if we
Yeah.
see each other in that way more often, it can really make a difference in the world.
Yeah, that's great. There's a few things I want to touch on with what you're saying. One, I love that you're open about like, yeah, I've had anxiety, I've had
Absolutely.
struggle, because that makes it so much more relatable. I I always know that like Mr. Rogers hated being considered a saint because he's like, if people label me as that, it seems like it's something then unattainable.
Yeah.
And that's not true. So this idea of like, hey, you know what? We all struggle, but you can still
Yep.
find that joy, I think is such a powerful message. And
Yes.
so as somebody who struggled a lot with mental health growing up, and especially being a guy where I felt like it was just me, I can definitely appreciate just that honesty and vulnerability, what comes from it.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well,
Yeah.
I felt like I was doing a disservice to the world because before 2020, before COVID happened, no one really knew my struggles, because why
Yeah.
would they? I mean, they just saw me as this, you know, put together person and great. And when I kind of, you know, unraveled and spiraled out, people were shocked. My friends, my colleagues, my acquaintances were
Mhm.
struggling to see. And I realized I was perpetuating an illusion that I did have it all together. And yes, I do, but I also have this other side of me. And
Yeah.
by not sharing that, it wasn't being honest with the fact that, hey, we all have something that we're
Yeah.
struggling with, and we can be joyful despite it. And I've actually had people tell me, you know, seeing what you were going through, it gave me the confidence to know that I can deal with what I'm dealing with and still find joy in life too.
Yeah, exactly. It's so
Yeah.
good. And I got into Ted Lasso because I was out with a friend of mine, and he was like, have you seen Ted Lasso? I'm like, no, I haven't. He's like, oh, you would love it. And he told me about the dart scene. And I was like, this sounds amazing. And then so we watched it right off the bat. I'm like, this seems pretty cool. But the line that got me where I'm like, I'm fully in was, do you believe in ghosts, Ted? I do, but even more so, I think they should believe in themselves. I'm like, oh, yes, that's great. That's something.
Oh,
And oh, so I was hooked. We were kind of talking too about like just people not knowing what's going on behind the scenes, and you set up the clip perfectly And so the first clip we're going to look at, just for some context, this is season 3. And one of the team members revealed that he is homosexual, and one of the players seems to be mad about it. And so they're going into the locker room, and somebody yells a
derogatory.
Thank you. Thank you.
I gotcha.
And I was like, I'm going to try to say it, but I know it's not going to come out. And the player goes berserk and goes after him. So he gets kicked out. And so Roy Kent, who's famously like angry, is doing the press conference. So they're asking him like why the player's name is Isaac did what he did. So we'll watch that clip and then talk a little bit about it.
When I was first coming up through Sunderland, there was an old timer on the team, local guy. He and his wife were about to have their first kid, so during training one day, I made a joke that statistically, I was probably the real dad. And the boys fell about laughing, but he went fucking nuts. He battered me, properly. I had a black eye, chipped tooth, 3 broken ribs. I couldn't play for 6 games. He got booted off the team. And after that, no club would go near him. Then in the summer, after I could breathe again, I bumped into him in a pub, and I got the chance to say sorry for my stupid fucking joke. And he got to tell me he and his wife had lost the baby a month before all that went down. He hadn't told anyone. Kept it all inside. Look, I get that some people think if they buy a ticket, they've got the right to yell whatever abusive shit they want at footballers. But they're not just footballers. They're also people. And none of us know what is going on in each other's lives. So for Isaac to do what he did today, even though it was wrong, I give him love.
That is such a good
So good.
development of Roy. And one thing I think about when I see this scene. So when I was younger, there was this artist named Ginny Owens, I believe her name is. And she's a Christian artist, and one of her songs was like, I will go through the fire if you want me to. And I was listening, it was about struggle, and I'm like, no, she's probably got it on easy street, like just making a nice song to sell albums, whatever. So I went to my cousin's house, and I'm like, I bet you she's not seen one trouble day in her life. And my cousin goes, Joe, Ginny Owens is blind. And I was like, oh, maybe she has gone through trouble.
Wow.
And so I like that like when we reveal what's going on with us,
Yeah.
like it makes sense.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah.
And I love what you're talking about, like helping people remember that they're great. You know, I work with people who've made mistakes, and it's usually not just because I felt like it. There's bigger things going on. And so I just thought that whole scene was powerful. What were some of your takeaways?
Agreed. I mean, right off the bat, we don't know what people are going through and their responses to it, and not understanding, you know, their backstory, but understanding that we are all human. You know, the fact that he said. And I love that it all came from Roy, which made it
Yeah.
even sweeter. You know, the guy who F's this and F's that. And man, he's funny, but he's a little rough around the edges. You
Yeah.
can see the development in the character, which is absolutely true. But what I love about the scene, it reminds us about, it's not about the game, it's about the humans playing the game.
Yes.
The reminder that we are all humans. So your colleagues at work, the people you meet in a grocery store, the people who are your customers. These are, yes, customers, clients, colleagues, bosses, but they're also people.
Mm-hmm.
People at the core. And I love when I have an opportunity to talk to leaders and managers, because I always say, you know, we're people first, colleagues, competitors, coworkers, employees second. Because the first piece is that human component. The second piece is that secondary role in our lives. And if we support someone on that human level, they will deliver for us in the other areas of their life too. So I have managers who they cannot get the productivity that they want. They're not getting the results. And my first question is, well, tell me about these people. And they all go into their role and their responsibility in the organization. And my question is, no. Tell me about these people.
Yeah.
And the more you can develop and enhance and help them become wonderful people, the more gratitude and connection they're going to feel in that role, and will move mountains for you, because they know you care about them as a human first and everything else second.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I agree. I know. So when I got a job as a production manager at a company called Foxtrot, and when I came in, the floor was very toxic. People were literally building walls. Everybody was watching everybody for any little slip up. And first few months were rough, because I'd have somebody new in my office every day being like, you need to fire this person. They're doing this, and this. And I kind of was like, okay, getting production numbers up will be great, but right now that's not what I need to focus on. And so I did a lot of work on the team, started to set a new standard of like, how do we treat each other? Who are we?
Yeah.
And within 6 months, it went from this toxic area to having one of the highest employee satisfaction in company history. And it was tough, but holding that ground. And I think you probably see this in your job, where sometimes managers probably just want to be like, let's just iron fist this. Just come on, just do it. And that usually doesn't get great results, probably.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah. And I'm curious, have you ever met somebody like Roy Kent, who's rough around the edges, but had just this whole other side to him of being like a great human being?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's people do and behave the way they know. And maybe, you know, for whatever reason, whatever their history, this is how they feel and are outwardly expressing who they are. But I have found that, you know, if you really get to know someone and believe in them and help them see the greatness in themselves, I mean, it will soften. It's all about seeing the human side of someone. And the fact that, you know, the whole relationship dynamic between Jamie and Roy, you know, the whole, you know, when his father was being a jerk, and Roy was there to support him and love him. I mean, you could see he's a good human. And I believe most people are good humans. I mean, yes, of course, you've got people who just are not good people, but I think they're few and far between. I believe that, you know, the majority are good people, would really help out another human if possible, if they could. And we're all just doing the best we can with what we have to work with.
Yeah, I agree. And I think having somebody believe in you.
Yes.
So, I mean, Ted Lasso has the great line, like, you know, talking about season 1 with Trent Krim, when they're out and eating, and he's like, you know, it's not about winning or losing. It's about having these guys be the best versions of themselves. He's like, is it hard? Yeah, it's hard sometimes, but it's also hard growing up not having somebody believe in you.
Yeah.
And I think having somebody believe in you that you can become more.
Yeah.
I often said, like, when I most of my life, I had very low self-esteem. And when I had great mentors who believed in me, I wasn't ready to believe in myself, but I believed in them and they
Yeah,
believed in me. So that meant something.
definitely. Definitely. Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's a beautiful dynamic. And you know what I love about the show too is this show could have literally been about any group activity, any sport, any I mean, literally drop this cast and their dynamic into any environment and the outcome would have been the same.
Yeah.
In my opinion, the football is secondary. I mean, it was
Yes.
great. I mean, so much fun. But
Mhm.
it's really about the humans who are playing the football and their
Yeah.
dynamic and the fact that Ted came in there with this whole and Ted knew that. He
Yeah.
knew that he didn't know a gosh darn thing about football,
Yeah.
but he knows people and he knows that if you support them and show them that belief and love and encouragement and help them see their own greatness, magic can happen whether you're in an office or on a field
Yeah.
or on the pitch or on the pitch.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. And I, when you're talking, one of the things that remind me that makes Ted Lasso so powerful is season 1, when Rebecca comes clean that she's been trying to sabotage him the whole time. And first thing he says to her is, I forgive you. And just that it just, I feel like this show has great transformation of characters, just really
Yes.
good story arcs. And there's so many great callbacks.
Yes.
And I think too, if we look at our lives, a lot of times we can look back and be like where we were, like we all have those story arcs.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and for me, I remember when I was in high school, I had a prayer I would pray often, which is, I just want to be a good man, because I have had some bad examples in my life and I was scared of being that. And so I would just be like, I just want to be a good man. That's what I want. Like, whatever else happens in life, great. I just want to be a good man.
Yeah.
And through a lot of events that were tough, it's brought me here
Yeah.
to who I'm really proud and happy of who I am.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I love, we all have story arcs.
Well, and I love that you brought that up with the whole Rebecca thing, because we all make mistakes and there's some beauty in the fact that, yes, it was a horrible thing and it came from a place of wanting to get back at Rupert and not, to harm Ted, but basically she didn't care who she harmed as long as at the end of the day Rupert was the one who was punished.
Yeah.
But the fact is she never brought that up again. And I really liked that because, they didn't weave that back into, well, remember when we first met, I was, what I did to you. It was like, you know what? Ted forgave her. And most importantly, she forgave herself.
Yeah.
And I find that in my coaching practice, when I'm working with people, that's a really hard thing to do, because when good people make mistakes, which we've all done, believe me, we've all done and been there, it's very easy for us to continue to feel badly about that and harp on the fact that, wow, what was I thinking? And I'm just disgusted by myself. Yes. Okay. But you know what? We make amends both to the person, the situation, we learn from it, and we pledge to do better. And that's all we can do. By going back and rehashing and wishing things were different, that accomplishes nothing. It just wastes precious time that we could be living and doing wonderful things. But it's very easy to slide back into that feeling of kicking our own butt over and over and over and over again. And I'm glad she didn't do it. I'm glad they never did a callback to that.
Yeah, I love that. I never even thought about it. But yeah, it just was like, okay, move on.
Exactly.
And I feel like forgiving yourself is something that kind of slips through the cracks of like learning lessons growing up. So that's one thing I've been trying to work with my kids about, like, okay, yes, you made a mistake here. There's some consequences for it, but I love you still, forgive you. But now it's time to forgive yourself.
Yes, move on.
And now it's time to move on, learn from it. I like just pledging to do better.
Yeah, that's all we can do. Learn from it and promise to do better in the future. And that's it. I mean, we all make mistakes. We're human, and do I Do I wish that we didn't make mistakes? Of course, but that's just unrealistic. So the best course of action is to acknowledge it, learn from it, and pledge to do better.
Yeah. You again are just setting me up perfectly for our next
Yes.
clip. So this next clip is Trent Krim, who's just a great character. I'll have to send you some pictures at Comic-Con because I ran into a guy who looked just like Trent Krim. I was like,
I love it.
And I was like, are you dressed up like him? And he's like, no,
Yeah.
it's just the way I look. But I get that all the time. So I was like, oh. And I ran into Coach Beard too, which was fun.
The real one, or somebody
I wish
who looked like
somebody who looked like him. So I almost had the opportunity to meet Jamie and Danny, but we were too late on that. So
next time.
But Trent Krim, who was he was a reporter for the Independent, the first two kind of known as a harsh reporter, ends up leaving the job, and on season 3 he comes in to write a book about the team, and we find out that Roy and Trent have bad blood, or more so I guess Roy has bad blood against Trent, and so he tells everybody, do not speak in front of this guy. When he's in the room, you don't talk. And so it's kind of awkward. So we're coming in where they're having a discussion, and Ted and Roy just had a conversation, and Ted was basically like, hey, you gotta let your ego go because you're gonna ruin a lot more than just a game. So this is Roy coming out of that, and we'll see what that interaction looks like.
Krim!
It's actually quite funny when he yells at other people, isn't it?
Newcomer Roy Kent is an overhyped, so-called prodigy whose unbridled rage and mediocre talent rendered his Premier League debut a profound disappointment. Do you know who wrote that? I was 17 years old. This fucking wrecked me.
I thought I was being edgy. Just trying to make a name for myself. All I really did was look for the worst in people. I'm sorry.
It's all right. Give me that. You know, it's funny. We had a lot in common back then. I thought one another such shit at their job.
And now look at us.
God.
Yep.
So I got a question for you. Why do you think Roy kept that in his wallet?
Yeah, I mean, words are powerful, you know, and he was starting his career, so at the time he was very sensitive, I'm sure, to the media, and so maybe it was a reminder to him to keep working. Maybe he saw that as motivation to keep working hard and you know, proving this guy wrong, this prick wrong.
Yeah.
What I was surprised about was that he put it back in the wallet.
Yeah.
After he had the conversation with Trent. I mean, because at that point you would think, well, I would think, hey, you know what? I called this guy out on it. He said it wasn't about you, Rory. It was about me trying to be, you know, controversial in my reporting so I could make a name for myself. It had nothing to do with you. You were collateral damage, so to speak. But it's a good reminder that words matter. And, you know, I mean, we may not even think of something, but somebody else can take it to heart, both positive and negative.
Yeah, exactly. And I like that. And I also wonder if it's a little bit like one thing I think about, so when I was 30, I was working at a job I should not have been at. And it was a very high stress job. And we were unveiling one of the biggest medical projects in US history.
Wow.
So everybody there was at stress level 11. At the same time, my oldest was born, and he was born 3 months early, but his lungs stopped developing at like 23 weeks. So he ended up needing a trach, and he was in the hospital for 4 months. And these two things together wrecked me. And I became hospitalized, and remember, like, when I was hospitalized thinking I'm never going to work again. This is it. My life's over. And I look at that time wrecked me, but now it serves me because I'm a peer support specialist. So I work with people who are going through mental health crisis. And I use my story of recovery to offer them hope. And so I wonder if that's a little bit of what it is for Roy, where it wrecked him, but now it serves him to be to maybe say, this isn't who I am, like very legend of the sport, and like helping others now as a coach, be like, ignore that crap, just focus on doing what you're doing.
It's just poopy.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So I kind of resonate. I mean, it's such a little detail, but it resonates with me of
absolutely.
Like, at what point does something that sucked turn into something good?
Yeah, it's true.
I have to say, I missed this. I just caught it this time. I never noticed Jamie saying, it's actually kind of funny when he yells at someone else.
Well, because not most of it, but a lot, but Jamie does or has gotten the end of Roy's wrath, so to speak, for a while there.
Yeah, exactly. And so that cracked me up. I just love how everybody's kind of cowering in fear around Roy. He's like grabbing his bag, like, oh. And just, I love Trent Crim's like nervous approach into the bathroom.
Well, and when he calls him Crim, I mean, he's literally like, yeah, it's true. It's true.
Yeah.
So good. Speaking of Roy Kent, I have to show you my t-shirt.
Yes. You show the whistle one. I love it. It's so good.
Oh, I laughed so hard because it was so funny. Not only did he say whistle, he goes whistle, like as a whistle. I mean, it's just so funny.
Yeah.
So funny. And there's so many of those moments in the show. I mean, they just knocked it out of the park in terms of the depth that we're talking about, but yet the funny.
Yes.
I mean, the
great balance.
Funny balance of just laugh out loud.
Yeah. And I think that's a good message too, because the very first episode I did of this, the main content was not taking yourself so seriously. And that's something I've leaned into.
Absolutely.
And the more I've leaned into it, the more like it's a transformation that happens. So I have a second podcast called Two Voices, One Story. And it's my wife and I talk through like my mental health breakdown, what it was like, with my son, Jack. And now we're doing a series called Find the Humor. And so like the first one was about my night terrors, because for a long time I felt so embarrassed to have night terrors.
Sure.
And my family didn't know what they were, so they thought it was me having a bad dream, and then be like, it's real. So they would get frustrated with me because, again, they didn't know. And so I would go even more into a shame spiral. But I talk about the first time I started to own them was it seemed like the worst time to have a night terror. We were at a youth conference, and I was in a room full of teenage guys.
Oh, no.
And I had a night terror. And I was just so mortified. And we were in a group the next day, and like one of the coolest guys of the group everybody loved was there. And I'm like, oh, he's going to rip me a new one. And so I was like, hey guys, I'm sorry about last night. And the girls were like, well, what happened? And I was like, well, this happened. And the cool guy goes, yeah, I wasn't sure what was going on, but I hid under my sleeping bag. And I was like, what? And I found out a lot of people were just like, what's happening? And I found that it was really funny, people's reactions. And I started to find like humor in it of like, I've scared the daylights out of people. And there's times like my friend who would spend the night, I'd be like, Greg, there's somebody in the closet. And he's like, no, there's not. I'm like, yes, there is. And he's like, really? And he'd come over and I'd hand him a coat hanger and then go back to bed. Like, and so I like that humor part of this, just taking yourself so seriously.
Absolutely. And I think that it's important to look for not only the funny moments in life in general, but when things are hard, it's okay to find the humor in them. It's okay to find the funny, if you will, because we need that. It doesn't mean we are not taking a situation seriously, but some levity can help us process a little bit more. And just, again, everybody's got something, and we can see the humor in it if we try.
Yeah, definitely. So before I ask you 3 questions, is there anything else you want to cover that you don't feel like we touched on?
As it relates to Ted Lasso?
Sure.
I just love it.
Yeah.
I just love it. You know, again, I've often wondered, would I have loved this show as much as I did if it hadn't taken place during such a dark time in my life? Like, it was literally the beacon that gave me something to look forward to and something to really enjoy. And I think I would have, but the fact that it was during such a dark time in my life personally, I think made me feel even more connected to it, and just really found it to be the gift that I truly needed. And just it's just so beautifully done. It's just so beautifully done. And of course, the whole idea of Ted having struggles, you know, of course, here's this guy who seems to have it all together and is so good about, you know, making everybody feel good. But of course, like everyone, he has struggles too. And finally, his acknowledgement of that and willing to have the conversations, as hard as it is, we got to go through the hard stuff to get past it, because otherwise our body, like he was having those panic attacks, it's going to come out in some way. So it's better to find a way to process it, whether that's through professional support or just getting some sort of resources to help. But you got to go through it to get through it.
Yeah, exactly. And just addressing it, and so powerful. So I got 3 questions for you. First question, which clip did you like more?
Of the 2 that you showed?
Yep.
The first one. I mean, I liked them both. But I think the first one was such a beautiful reminder that everybody's going through something that we don't know. And then the fact that Roy Kent, of all people, is the one saying, I don't know what's going on with him and what this came from, but I love him. I support him. And of course, Rebecca, her facial expressions of seeing the evolution of this guy. I mean, when he walked in, they were all like, oh, no, this is not going to be good. But
Higgins has the
so funny. Looks like he's going to poop right there. But the dynamic of, you know, seeing this person who is very rough around the edges, reminding everyone else of the humanity, and that's the most important piece. You know, that was such a beautiful transformational moment.
Yeah, I think that's such a great thing. I agree with you. I like that first clip, and just that reminder. I don't know what's going on, but I give him love. And
humans first.
Yeah.
Football players second. Yes. Reporters second. We're all human first.
Yeah.
It was, and you could see the actors and actresses, you know, in the audience as reporters were like, oh that reminder, you know, the reminder that these are people.
Yeah.
Before anything else.
Yeah, exactly. So second question is, which clip did you feel like we got more conversation out of?
Oh, I think we had a good convo on both. I don't know. I mean, ties, again, I love that first one, but are ties allowed?
Ties are allowed. Ties are totally allowed. So I agree. It's tough to, I felt like this was one of the few times we had great balance between both of them.
Hmm.
Sometimes the first one, like we're feeling it out, and then second one we're in a roll. So, but it like both were good.
Yeah.
Third question is, if we had to take one of these clips and do a deep dive and just pull out every little nugget of wisdom we could, which clip would you like to look at?
I think they're both good. I think we did a pretty good dive on the first one. I think the second one, maybe we could go a little deeper in terms of the power of words and intent. We didn't talk about intent, but you know, another piece that I love to talk about is before we so when somebody says something or does something, our first reaction is, oh, this must have been a slight against me or an inferring about me about something. Well, I think sometimes if we zoom back and know the intent of the comment or the action, then we often will see it has nothing to do with us.
Yeah.
You know, and so
exactly.
I love to remind people, what are some of the other possibilities
Yeah.
that this event or this person did this? And if we zoom out, you know, maybe they didn't say goodbye because they were running late, or maybe they got good with goodbyes, or maybe whatever, as opposed to, oh, that person didn't value the relationship I had with them, and so they just decided not to say goodbye.
Yeah.
Whatever. That's just an example, but it's like, we'll consider the other possibilities of what this person's motivations were. What was their intent?
Yeah.
And sometimes just knowing that there are other possibilities can help us maybe take it out of being about us all the time or feel slighted.
Yeah, that's it's almost like an exercise that you have to like strengthen that thought process.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Consider the other possibilities, especially in the middle of it when we feel like it's got to be about us. It has to be. There's no other explanation. Okay, well, maybe that's true. But could there be another explanation that has nothing to do with us?
Yeah. My mom will always be like, okay, I'm making this all about me, but were you mad at me? And I'm like, no, I wasn't, Mom.
But in kudos to your mom for asking the question.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's another piece too, is what if Roy had, I don't know, I mean, reached out to Trent Krim, you know, years before this, you know, and said, hey, you know, at least get it off his chest. Hey, this was kind of a jerkish move to do. I was a kid. And who knows if Trent would have had the right response at that point. Maybe he wouldn't have even been enlightened enough within himself to know. But again, having those tough conversations with somebody, especially if it's your mom, you know, and you have that dynamic, you have that love and trust, have the conversation. Hey, when you said X, Y, and Z last week, it really hurt me. Was that about me, or is it something completely unrelated? And then just to have the opportunity to clear the air is very important, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
It's uncomfortable and it's awkward, but it's helpful.
Yeah, agreed. I would deep dive that second clip as well. So I want to give you some time. You've got so many good things going on for you. Just kind of talk to people about where they can find you, some of the stuff you're doing, and like what's close to your heart.
I appreciate that. Well, as you can see, I'm very passionate about people and the dynamic of people seeing each other as people and helping each other see the greatness in themselves. And so I'm known as the Joy Seeker. So my website is thejoyseeker.com, and there is where people can find all the things about me. Most notably, I love speaking. Any kind of stage, any group who wants to learn a little bit more about joy and how to find it, how to be intentional about it. I welcome those opportunities. I've spoken to groups of, you know, a dozen all the way up to 500, 600 people, just again, reminding them of their greatness and of their awesomeness and how to connect with each other. My talks are fun. We have a great time. We engage, we learn from each other. We have a whole lot of laughs, and it's just something I absolutely love. You know, and it's funny too, Joe, you never know where life is going to take you. I was doing a talk a few years ago, and at the end of it, this lovely young woman came up to me and asked me if I officiate weddings. And I said, well, I've never done it, but it sounds fabulous. Let me effort that and get back to you, because yes, please, joy, weddings, love, all good stuff. So I got ordained and officiated her wedding, which was the most wonderful thing. And now I have officiated over 220 weddings.
Oh, wow.
And it just continues to grow, and people just reach out, and I love it, because what better way to spread joy than to be a part of a couple's magical day?
Yeah.
But there's information on that on my website too. So if anybody's getting hitched, feel free to reach out. I'd love to chat with you.
Yeah, definitely. And one thing I want to add to this is I'm very passionate about like supporting people who I'm like, wow, they're doing cool stuff. And one thing I've appreciated about you, Lisa, is like I felt like 2 minutes in, we've known each other for a long time.
Right? Me too.
like you just made it so comfortable and relatable. And I always tell people, like, what is somebody like before we hit record? I'm like, this is Lisa. This is who she was before we hit record. Somebody who cares, somebody who's very, she's very established, and I'm just starting off with podcasting. So for her to come on, I think that shows a lot about, there's a saying, you can tell a lot about somebody by the way they treat people who can do nothing for them. And so I just highly encourage, if you have anything, you have Joe's full approval. Check her out. Check her website out. If you're looking for somebody to marry you, you won't regret it.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah.
It's been a pleasure. Truly, you're a blast, and I wish you so much luck in this podcasting journey and with all you're doing. You're changing the world. You really are. And I think you're a fellow joy seeker, my friend.
Exactly. So appreciate you coming on. It was such a gift. And I'd love to have you back someday.
For sure. Yeah, definitely.
I say this every time. My sick sense of humor is hopes that the second we hit stop, you'll be like, no, I am never coming back. That was just me being nice.
No, what you see here is what you get, my friend.
Exactly. So, all right. Well, thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next